Good morning, Turks and Caicos. Welcome to First Edition. Oh, this morning is a lovely morning for us. We have as our guest the privilege of the Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Honorable C. Washington Misick. Honorable Premier, good morning. Welcome to First Edition.
Good morning, Cheryl, and it is my privilege.
Thank you for coming. Now, Premier, we're about to hear the state of the state. What's the big idea or the theme that will anchor this year's address?
Let me say this. I think people look at where we are today as the fifth year of the life of this government because we have won the last election. So people, it's a continuum. Okay? What I can say is that when we first came to office, we had to kind of recover from everything that was happening. And then we got into the kind of stabilization mode. And now the focus has to be on mastering government, making sure that systems are in place for the future. And so that's what it's about. It's going to be front-facing. It's going to be speaking about the reality of the world that we currently live in, which has changed significantly since in the last 5 years. It's going to be frank, speak frankly about the successes, the challenges, but it is going to be powerful and essentially, you know, it's going to speak to our strength, and it's going to also speak to how we see the future. You know, strong today, secure tomorrow. And so that's really the focus is going to be.
So, Honorable Premier, if you had to describe the state of the Turks and Caicos Islands right now in plain language to the average household, would you define it as strong, strained, stable, and fragile?
As I said, we live in a world now where there's a lot of discombobulation, a lot of insecurities, there's political instability, there's supply chain issues, there are environmental challenges. The TCI has been growing very rapidly. It's put tremendous strain on our infrastructure, that is social and physical infrastructure. And so while we are strong, we have to be realistic about the challenges that we need to fix today if we're going to have a better and a more secure future. So what I would say in a nutshell is the TCI is in a good place, and the set of problems that we're having are not insurmountable. And in some ways, I would rather deal with the challenges that I have rather than to deal with the alternative challenges where no one was interested in investing in this country, and the economy was not growing, and you know, those are not the challenges we have. The challenges we have is one of perhaps the rate of growth, which has been rapid, which has been uneven, and which we now have to arrest so that we can make sure that the social development of our people can catch up. So I think we're in a good place. To say we don't have problems and everything is rosy, and no, that would be disingenuous.
Yeah. Listeners, viewers, if you're just joining us, we're speaking to our Premier, the Honorable C. Washington Misick. Tune in to First Edition. Now, Honorable Premier, you mentioned that the first year is about strategizing and developing. How do you respond to the criticism where people say, this isn't your first year, this is your fifth year? How do you respond to that?
I would say that they are correct. Yes, this is our fifth year. This is as I said at the beginning, this is a continuation of the same theme, right? And yes, that is good, and it is not so good, depending on how the public or persons look at it. It's good in that it is a continuation, and we are not new, and so that makes the space for criticism wider, because we're not using training wheels, shouldn't be using training wheels anymore. We should be planing, right? And so, yeah, I would admit that this is for all practical purposes our fifth year in government.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Premier, what would, in your view, what would you say is the single biggest misconception the public has about the state of the country today?
Okay, that's a very good question, because I think people can see physical things, mm-hmm. like a piece of road, a building, but people don't seem to see systems. Now you should be able to feel systems. And so, as I said, we've come a long way extremely fast. Mm-hmm. TCI has come 50 years, where it's taken countries 200 plus years to come. And so because we've come so fast, we've come fast so quickly, there's a lot of catching up we need to do. There's a lot of systems we need to put in place. And so what we've been focusing on is buildings, trying to build systems that will make it easier to deliver for the people of these islands. And there are some of the things that people are not able to see. You know, healthcare, we've had challenges there. We have challenges with some of the infrastructure projects that have been lagging simply because of, in some cases, events or issues beyond our control. We've had issues with trying to build quickly enough a digital system, e-governance system. These are all systems, better communication systems. Yeah. These are all things that we're working on. A lot of people don't understand that. Okay, you know, when we started, as I say, we had to do a lot of kind of retooling and did work to repair the economy and all that stuff, and gave concessions and grants and stimulus and all of those things in order to get to a point of stability. And now we're there, we have to be realistic about the future. We have all sorts of issues with, as I say, supply chain issues. Anytime tariffs go up, freight goes up. There's a snowstorm in northern Florida where oranges come from, or some other parts of the world where these are all things that impact on TCI or the world. There are really no boundaries, no financial boundaries, and no supply boundaries. So whatever happens in China or in Russia or in Ukraine or the United States have a ripple effect around the world, and TCI is in the world. So it will have an impact on that. But of course, when people are hurting, they don't tend to consider all of those intricacies.
Now, last year we didn't have a State of the State because you were very busy giving us your victory message. But you've had the tradition of always reporting back on promises made in your manifesto or by your government. Will you be reporting back to the public on promises made? And how do we as citizens measure success?
Okay. Yes, we didn't have a State of the State last year because we were in the middle of elections. We had elections in February last year. In fact, on the 7th of February last year, a week or so, would have been a week ago since our anniversary. And of course, politicians, governments are measured based on the promises they make to people. That's why it's important to make sure they're realistic. And of course, we will be reporting on those promises, what has been delivered, what is in the process of being delivered. And again, because we are continuing, one has to look from the beginning right through to where we are today, because the promise continues. The promise continues and the delivery continues, right? I mean, if you look at the increase in expenditure that we've put in just in the social support system, right? It used to be $3 million. Today it's $9.5 or $8.5 million we're putting into, people forget these things. Look at the people over 70 years old who are not getting anything from government when I came to office. Now, if you're a couple sitting at home and over 70, you're getting, apart from everything else that you may be getting, you're getting an extra $2,000 a month. So people may complain about cost of living and that kind of stuff, which is legitimate. And it's only human nature just to look at the negative parts of things and not necessarily the positive side. But if you kind of hinge everything together as to what this has been delivered over the last 5 years, because since people want to talk about 5 years and not just the last year, then I have to speak about 5 years as well. But the promise, I believe we've done a good job in delivering on a lot of our promises. Basically, a lot of money has gone into developing sort of social development of people. Today, we live in a country where crime has gone down significantly. January was a month when we didn't have a single murder. Hopefully, we can end February the same way. And these are promises that the government made, that we would do everything we can to invest heavily in law and order, and we are continuing to do so. And security is the foundation of everything. I mean, it's the base of everything. If you can't be secure, you can't build. And
you mentioned that $2,000 over 70 makes me think that aging does have some benefits.
Well, I had an aunt who said age comes with a package. She wasn't thinking of that package. She says if you're going to get old, you must be prepared to accept the package, and that includes arthritis and everything else.
So, Honorable Premier, I know your office says that you're not going to give too much away this morning, but what are some of the challenges or milestones that you're most proud of that we should listen out for in the State of the State address?
Well, as I say in my manifesto, or during that might have been even the beginning of the last term, that we've come a long way in 50 years, and that last 50 years is not necessarily always been to the maximum benefit of people like you and me who are from these islands. That now has to change. Provo, in particular, the stress on the environment, the stress on the infrastructure, the stress on the social system because of the pressure of development is actually means that we are now at an inflection point where we have to now think in terms of whether the cost of development is more than the benefits. Mm-hmm. So some of the things we are going to be doing is trying to consolidate the gains, withdraw things like concessions for major development, so that any developer comes here now, excluding those that have already been approved or in the pipeline, will have to pay the full cost of their investment, whether it means if they'll have to all of their costs will be internalized because we have roads to fix, we have utilities, fire equipment that we need to put on out there. We need ambulance, we need more police presence in police stations and all sorts of other things that we need. So we can't afford to be subsidizing investment anymore, right, because we don't need to. In Provo, what we have a new policy coming out called Strategic Tourism Development, Strategic Sustainable Tourism and Spatial Development Policy, which is about to be announced. It will go to the public for consultation, but what that means that we will provide incentives, additional incentives, or be a little bit more aggressive with those incentives to the other islands. But as it relates to Providenciales, those incentives, except for Heritage Turks and Caicos Islanders, those incentives will now go away because we don't need them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. The other thing people can look forward to is basically, apart from all of the other concessions that have been given over the life of this government, and relating to concessions, including the MSME program, including duty exemptions, including concessions on land purchases and all that stuff, people can look to actually having a policy in place that restrict the purchase of residential land below a certain level, mm-hmm. in order to try to hold down the cost of housing or cost of accommodation in these islands. So there's a lot of those policy issues and social issues that we're going to be delivering on.
Premier, you mentioned all the things that these islands need in terms of infrastructural enhancements or developments. So would you say that your remaining years in office, your remaining term, will you focus on wage growth, social protection, or cost containment, or all three?
Well, I have very little control over cost, right? What I can do, or what the government could do to try to eliminate or reduce the cost to the average consumer, is to see how we could, I don't want to use the word subsidize, but that's what it is, subsidize people's living cost. But we don't have a lot of control over cost per se, because we are not a country that produce a lot, and everything that we consume here mostly is imported. And even if it wasn't imported, because of the inputs into the production of anything that has to come from outside, it would make that production very expensive. So it may still not be competitive. It will be useful because the ability to be able to depend on some local production, particularly if you have things like pandemic, it's also important to have industries, right? But we don't have any major control over cost. We have, so my focus is on sustainability in every area: economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. That includes massive investment and improvement in the healthcare sector. We already have one of the best healthcare systems in the Caribbean, terribly expensive, and it's not sustainable in the way it is. But we're going to have to invest more money, we're going to have to improve the systems, and we're going to have to develop local capacity, and so that we can reduce our treatment abroad program. It costs us approaching $60 million. Our budget is around 600 plus, or approaching $600 million a year. And if the one aspect of your one line item, so to speak, and that's only the partial cost of healthcare.
That's a big chunk.
That is totally unsustainable. So we have to do something about, and those are some of the things we're working on. Again, things have happened here very fast. A lot of things have gotten out of control. Now we have to make the hard decisions to bring them back into containment, And the public is going to have to understand that. At the end of the day, there's no free lunch. We have to bring things, we have to build in discipline in spending, discipline in productivity, how people behave on the job. whether it's the public sector or the private sector. I think that's one of the biggest problems in this country.
You mentioned healthcare, Honorable Premier, and earlier in your answer to you're talking about housing. How do you and your government address the perception that home ownership is almost unattainable for the ordinary Turks and Caicos Islander?
Well, it is being addressed. We're not moving as fast as I would like to move. As you know, we have set up made a decision to put in place a mortgage corporation. That bill will go to the House, will be laid on the table on Thursday of this week, with the view of actually having an operating institution before the end of the first fiscal quarter of this year. We went out for an RFP for housing. The replies that we've gotten haven't yielded a substantial, successful bidder, right? So we are now looking at how else we can approach that too, because what we were looking at doing 200 homes at one fell swoop. We didn't get a qualified, I can say this, we haven't had a single qualified, as I am told by my technicians, a single qualified bidder. So now I'm looking at what the next approach is going to be, whether we should do start with a smaller pilot. But the mortgage corporation is meant to facilitate property ownership, and it don't necessarily mean that we will necessarily build every house, because that we couldn't do that in any case. Some of that would be working with financial institutions to assist in the delivery of homes. But we are very serious. There's a whole revolution going on in the Crown Land unit at the moment to make property more available to locals, including looking at, we have that amnesty program, but including looking at how we could provide a installment payment program to allow people to be able to afford to purchase their properties, and also looking at how we can, even in some cases, have larger parcels subdivided so it becomes cheaper, right? Because again, the way we were dealing with land in the past is not sustainable. By the time my grandchildren come along, the way we were doing land would not be anything for them. So we have to be realistic, we have to be disciplined, we have to think about the next generation, and we have to think about others, because in this country it seems that we don't think about the other person, right? We're just all interested in what can we acquire, what can we accumulate for ourselves, rather than thinking nationally. And that's the big problem. I think it's about what have you done for me personally lately, not what are you doing for the country at large, you know.
And we have to say congratulations to your government. Recently, the Crown Line unit had a significant conference, and they explained the new CLASP initiative and the amnesty program. And the chairman of the mortgage corporation was there, and he stood up and explained, because people had a lot of questions. So that was good. Let's shift gears a little bit, Honorable Premier. We know that tourism seems to be our bread and butter, the mainstay of our economic stability. What role will your government play in diversification and making sure that there's a future, a sustainable future for Turks and Caicos Islanders, and particularly our young professionals?
Okay, very good question. Very, very good question, because tourism is so multifaceted, right? It's not just providing a hotel room anymore and a restaurant to eat. It's about the blue economy, it's about the purple economy, it's about the orange economy. So the musicians, the artisans, all of these people, everything in this country is connected to tourism. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why I went out of the way to create the destination management organization in the first place, right? The currently named Experienced Turks and Caicos. So one of the things we has to focus on, because again, Turks and Caicos has a small population, okay? And if you notice, we're doing a lot of things to try to empower locals. The new real estate bill that we passed, the business licensing bill is creating so much problem, which is now going to be enacted, I think sometime right around about now. We just put together a whole new business fee schedule that is going to become effective immediately. And so we're working on training modules and other requirements that would ensure that local trained returning students are given opportunities for an escalated pathway to middle management and upper management in tourism and in other places, other parts of the economy. Government is doing it, and so we expect the private sector to follow suit. But we're going to be diversifying tourism so that it's not all concentrated in Provo. And that's the idea of the sustainable tourism and spatial development that I mentioned to you, to try to push some of that to ease the pressure, push some of it in other parts of the country. But yes, we have a significant number of young people who've gone abroad who've studied tourism, right? And some of that government is paid for. So it's important that we retain that skill. Let's be realistic. Turks and Caicos Islanders, they're not going to work in the gardens. They're not going to wash pots in the kitchen. And some of them are not going to wait on tables or serve in rooms. There's nothing wrong with those jobs. They create an honest living. And it's important that we keep the wage rate reasonable as inflation increases. We have to make sure that those rates are livable wage rates. But by and large, the young Turks and Caicos Islands, for the most part, aspire to be into professions, into the entrepreneurship business. And those are the areas that we have to create a pathway through education and training and the rest. Yeah. Because it's not enough of us to occupy all of those areas. The one thing that I'm disappointed in, that a lot of our young men are not going into construction, because that's where the money is, right? And it's a bit disappointing that those opportunities are available, but they're not actually using it. Now, we do have legislation coming on board this year, which is going to carve out a niche in the construction industry. If you're not, we're going to be putting a limit on foreign construction companies to try to promote, and that's going to be another issue when it comes up, because it seems that every time we try to do something to empower people, there's a certain group of people who fight against it. But that is coming up very, very soon, because we have to create that pathway for our young men and women to be more active in the construction trade. And again, that's all connected to tourism. But water sports, tours, musicians, artisans,
Creatives.
The whole creative. And then we have a whole new program we're launching, a linkages program that is meant to not force, but to encourage small businesses and not so small businesses, linking back to larger businesses, particularly larger resort properties, for some of their supplies and stuff. And so those are some of the initiatives.
Yeah, that was so well said, Premier, because as a parent, it's not our dream for our children to be wait staff or room attendants. We want more. And I'm so glad you mentioned training and education, because I want to move there. How is your government preparing the workforce for future industries, not just current ones?
Well, again, that's a good question. And while we're investing in scholarships, and in the public service, there's a new program that the DG governor has just launched. One of the things I think we're not doing, focusing well enough, and we need to look at other countries like India and other places, what's happening in the artificial intelligence space. I think our kids, not to dumb them down or make them lazy, because that is such a huge space as well. But we need to focus more on technology, and in that area where I think we could be doing more. But I think from education generally, there's a lot going on there. There's the apprenticeship program, there's the couple of other programs that the minister has brought to the fore. And of course, we still are investing heavily in scholarships. So I think the future is bright for those young people who are prepared to discipline themselves, to learn a trade, to learn a profession, and come back to use it.
Premier, we know that you're a thinker and a visionary, and you're always looking at the wider picture. What unfinished business, if any, keeps you most focused as you look at the remaining years of your term? Any unfinished business?
Well, there's always unfinished business. You know, there's always unfinished business. There are institutions that needs to be, still institutions in this country that need to be built. You know, we need to be making sure that we take better care of as a part of our health system, better care of those indigents and other people who are ill, by making sure we have proper hospices, for example, is something that I really believe we need to, and we are dedicated to do. One of the plans we have is to reconvert the SIP cord back into a medical facility for a hospice that's close to the hospital, so that we can share doctors and everything. We need to have a better justice system that is a physical accommodation for the courts. Things like a proper remand center, because Haiti is not going to go away. We'll always have to deal with them. We need to deal with those persons who are coming to our shores humanely. We have young people in the prisons in Grand Turk who have not been convicted and spending years in jail even before their case comes up and stuff. So we need to fix that, because justice delayed is justice denied. So the whole justice system, I think so far we've worked on reducing crime, but we need to provide better infrastructure, more police stations, as I say, proper remand center, and empower provide more facility and bring on board over time more people in the regiment to protect our borders. And so that work is going to continue, you know, so that stuff is going to take time, yeah. But it's very necessary. Again, it's secure borders is critical to everything we do. You know.
Now, Premier, we know that it's still early in this term, this 5-year term for you. You've just done 1 year, but by the next general election, what do you want residents to say changed meaningfully under your leadership?
What I would want residents to say changed meaningfully, one of the biggest things would be service delivery, right? I am really so passionate about that. And to some extent, I am almost also a little bit disappointed that it haven't moved fast enough. And that is, you should be able to sit at home, right? Lines should be things of the past. This is the 21st century. We're moving fast into it. You should be able to sit at home and access government 24/7, right, without ever joining a line. Okay, we need to have a better and faster, more broadband internet service, right? The whole technology landscape, right? If at the end of the next 4 years, we would have traveled significantly down that road, I think we would have achieved a lot, because it makes life so much easier for other. You know, we've got clogged roads. We need, you know, right today, public transportation is the hot topic,
Yes.
right? Okay, those are some of the work that's taking place behind the scene. We're fairly advanced in delivery of a transportation or a public service system, right? All of these things, there's a lot that has been done, but there's a lot more that has to be done, right? And it requires dedication, both from ministers and from public servants, who are, in my view, when you put everything together and compare it with other places in the region and around the world, are fairly well taken care of by the public, right? And so the public have a right to expect more from government, more from government ministers, more from public servants. And so my appeal would be to politicians, myself included, to public servants and statutory bodies who are put in position to deliver for the public, to just make sure when you get up every morning, that's your prayer. What can I do today to deliver for the people of these islands? That is why we're there.
Yeah. You mentioned technology and all the things that your government would like to see and to do to make sure that, you know, life is enhanced and easier for us. On Friday last year, government launched the e-pay. How does that make you feel? At least that's a flashlight turned on in the tunnel, if not even the bright beam yet.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree, and there's a lot more to come. We've just hired, we're hiring new people. You know, the Ministry of Technology is a new ministry, so we're populating it now with new skills. I think we've just hired a Chief Information and Security Officer for the ministry, and others that will be followed. We're working on the national IDs. Strides are being made there. Progress is slow, but it's being made on the fiber network system for the Turks and Caicos Islands. Yeah, so those wheels are moving, but as I say, for me, for my liking, not necessarily fast enough.
Yeah.
But there are structures and strictures, you know, that we have to live by or be subject to, because otherwise things get off the rail. If you ignore process and procedures, and things could get murky very quickly.
Yeah. So, Honorable Premier, let's go back to your state of the state. If there was one commitment that you want the public to hold you personally accountable for after the state of the state, what would that be?
It's a hard one. That's a hard one. But you know, I think I want the public to hold me responsible for all my promises, right? But I think one of the most urgent things that I am focused on today is healthcare, right? I've spent, along with the minister, invested a lot of time in fixing NHIP and making sure and working on resolving the issues around the hospital.
Yeah.
Right? So those are two things right there, combined but together, but one, that I take very seriously, and I would expect that we will be able to deliver on that. Also, housing, accommodation, and bringing down the cost of housing is something that I would like the public to know that I am seriously committed to and am engaged with, and they can hold me to delivering on that.
So we're going to hold you to that, Premier.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you mentioned schools and healthcare and all the things that I wanted to talk to you about. Now, population growth continues to shape housing, schools, healthcare, and social cohesion. How does your government define sustainable growth for TCI?
Okay. Sustainable growth for me, first of all, has to be inclusive, right? Can't have a situation where one sector of the population is growing, doing well, and the other sector is not. Success and affordability is relative, right? What is success for you may not be, or what is affordable for you is not affordable for someone else. So inclusivity is important, right?
Yeah.
So that is why the whole structure of government revenue has to change to some extent, so that those persons who can afford to pay more pay more. We have to find that system, because the person who is making minimum wage, affordability only becomes affordable if it also includes some degree of subsidy or some protection by the government. So I see sustainability as with outcomes, right? That speaks to a protected environment, a security system, social security system, which means that every child has a right to a place in school, every child has a meal, every single mother has some level of protection, and basically the environment is protected so that we don't have shortcuts, mangroves being destroyed, and so sustainability to me means all of those things, and that is why TCI is, if it's not the first one, the first small countries in the region that has actually undertaken a carrying capacity study, and that we're going to be establishing as well. So when someone wants to build a large project, it's going to become more and more difficult, because there will be more requirement for ESIAs, environmental and social impact assessments, because what has been happening in the past with you just kind of stamp things and it goes through, that doesn't work anymore.
Now, Premier, I'm probably going to ask you to repeat yourself, but for those listeners and viewers who just joined us, which sectors or national priorities would you say will receive your strongest focus in the coming years?
Well, as I say, I believe in institutions, okay? So, but they're also physical infrastructure, right? I know a lot of people are disappointed that we haven't been able to deliver the Providenciales International Airport.
Yes.
So that is, we're focusing on that with laser-like. And just so the public understands, there was a breakdown in the whole procurement process, which created some issues for us, and so we haven't been able to deliver on that. But we're far advanced now with a new approach.
Yeah.
And so you will see some serious progress made in the coming year. There are roads is another big physical restricting part of our ability to grow. So you will see new investment there as well. And I still believe and that ultimately what is going to make the cost of living cheaper for not only people in Provo, but people in the rest of the Caicos chain of islands, the ability to drive from Provo to South Caicos eventually.
Yeah.
And that's not a pipe dream. I may not see it in this job, but I do believe we're planting the seeds for that now to happen. But definitely a serious improvement in healthcare and in education, physical infrastructure, continued improvement in delivery of social services, the e-government delivery 24/7. These are all issues, projects and achievements that are very much focused on.
Premier, people often say that promises made and words used during an election campaign are often forgotten once a government is seated. How do you respond to the individual who says, how will government move from announcements to action? How will you ensure delivery and accountability?
First of all, it takes people. Okay, it takes people to do those things and systems. Okay, and I think TCIG is short on both of those things. Okay, so one of the things we have to do is to be realistic about skills that we require. Right? We have to upskill our own people. But one of the things we also have to do is to, in the short term, acquire some of those skills from outside to deliver, particularly in the area of technology and infrastructure, engineers, quantity surveyors, you name them, right? Those are some of the skills that we're going to require. And while we've been providing scholarship in those areas and more of our young people are choosing those professions, not enough of our young people are into the numeric or quantitative science, which is part of what TCI requires. But it takes people, it takes dedicated people. It doesn't take people who are just interested in watching the clock and waiting for the end of the month to get paid. And I think, with due respect, there are too many of people who are doing that, you know. And so what is happening in government now, we're developing a tighter performance system. A consequence management system is being improved. So don't be surprised if some people are going to have to be asked to move out of the way and let other people get on with delivering the work.
Yeah. In a few sentences, Premier, what's your elevator pitch? Why should every citizen rather, take time to listen to this year's State of the State address?
Well, again, I'll end where I started, to say that I am not the person just to speak to fluff. I will speak to the challenges we face. I'll be very, very honest about the challenges we face. And so what I have to say is not going to be to try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And this economy is growing, as I said, but we do have challenges. Government even have challenges in its compliance issues with collecting government revenue, right? Again, because a lot of people aren't paying their way in this country. And I'm going to speak to that. I'm going to speak to where government could be doing a better job. I'm going to speak to the challenges we face globally and regionally, the instability in the region, supply chain issues. People need to know if we're going to secure the future, we also have to be aware of the risk. Haiti, we would love to, and I've been appealing to the UK about doing what they can do, because I would love to see more stability there. But on the same token, with the pressure on Cuba from the U.S. government at the moment, we could have another crisis situation which could impact us.
Yeah.
So people need to be aware of this, and we need to protect our future by being careful about how we use government revenue, but also we need to be able to collect it.
Yeah.
All right, and there are people who are not paying their way, and there may be people in the public service who are not doing the best job they can or should be doing to make sure that government assets, including the money that they should be collecting for government, is collected. So it's not going to be a pie in the sky. I don't, people need to know the good parts, the not so good parts. Right? I don't want to go into too many specifics at the moment, but I believe the good, the bad, and the indifferent people need to know.
Yeah.
They can then make up their minds to take responsibility for parts of their lives that they can take responsibility for. The government has to take responsibility for things that they need to take responsibility for to make sure that citizens of this country is protected, is secured, and have a good opportunity for a good life.
Well, we saw some of that frankness already this morning. There were things that you mentioned that you're not happy about in government or with your government right now. So we've seen some of that frankness. But finally, Premier, as you look at the state of the Turks and Caicos Islands today and the road ahead, when citizens and residents wake up 1 year from now, what's the change you want them to feel in their everyday lives that will tell them, without any speeches, without statistics, that this country is truly moving forward under your leadership?
Again, I keep going back because, the pyramid of one's existence is based on security, and things like health, right, and food, okay? So those are the things. A year from now, I want to see an appreciable improvement in the treatment abroad program and the way NHIP operates. The whole healthcare system is brought under containment. Basically, I want to see start to see better diversification of investment in TCI. I know, for example, South Caicos has more or less taken off.
Yeah.
North Caicos is just a hop and a skip, and things are happening there with a couple of new projects, including the old Royal Reef Hotel is being refinanced and development is about to take place there. We have a massive project coming on stream for Grand Turk in the expansion of the port over there to make it into a dual port, a cruise port, and that is very close now to being able to go to the public with a major detailed announcement. So these are some of the things that I would expect a year from now to see literally happening, and to say nothing about the sort of physical development of but that will continue, but it will be continue with containment. But the focus has to be on making sure that those persons who need assistance are getting the assistance they need. I'd like to see government being delivered more efficiently.
Yeah.
Things like immigration lines, customs lines, treasury lines at the Treasury. These are all, I like to see more rollout of our digital government, so that people feel, business feel that the efficiency is being supported by government, and citizens feel like they're being protected. And so those are, and I'll be back a year from now just to and you can question me again as to whether I've delivered on any of them.
Good. Premier, I want you to look directly at your camera and for 60 seconds, speak to the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Okay. All right. The camera's here, right? Okay. Well, I never forget why I'm here, right? And who put me here, and who I'm working for, right? And I know sometimes the public can be very cynical about politicians, and the public patience gets short with us, and they have a right to expect us to, as politicians, me as the Premier, to always work in their best interest. And I can promise you that exactly is what I'm doing. And I know people have views about me. I hear them, I see them all the time, and I have to chuckle within myself because so many of those views are so far off. But I want you to know that I am fully committed, as I've always been over the course of my life in politics. I admire our Turks and Caicos people for their tenacity, and one thing I would never do is betray your trust. Right? You have my word for that. I'll never betray your trust to my own cost. Right? I know the view is that the government hasn't done as much as it should do. I hear it, that you've given us 5 years this time and we haven't done anything in the last year. I can tell you that is not the case. And you can listen to the State of the State for more detail as to exactly what is being done and what has been delivered. But I can tell you, I work every day to try to make things better for Turks and Caicos and for the people of these Turks and Caicos Islands. Again, I appreciate your support, your patience, and my promise is to continue to do everything I can to deliver for you. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Honorable Premier, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on First Edition. Listeners, viewers, the Premier of the Turks and Caicos Islands sat down and talked with us, and we invite you to tune in to the State of the State address on February 26. Until next week, good night.
Right. Good night. Thank you.